I worked at a gas station for the last 5 years. For most of the time, I worked the overnight shift, which was from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. I didn't mind it, but it wasn't really my choice. That was all they had available at the time, and I needed a job. I did eventually move to the day shift, but that was just because my circumstances changed. I started going to school, and I couldn't stay up all night falling asleep in class. If it weren't for that, then I would have just kept doing it, because it was a lot easier. There were barely any customers, and hardly any work to do. The pay was a little better as well. I saw many strange things working the overnight shift over the years, but this is about an extremely creepy and weird thing that happened to me. Our gas station was on the side of a small highway that was not very busy. We were the only gas station for many miles, and there wasn't much else around there. No stores or other businesses. Surrounding the gas station was nothing but woods, but there were some farm fields not far away as well. There were a few houses around there too, but the closest one was probably 20 miles away. It was quite isolated. I got to work around 15 minutes early and parked my car at the front. It was already dark out, but the lights on the outside of the building were bright. The gas station was like a little bubble of daylight in a sea of darkness. The hum from the fluorescent bulbs was loud as I walked past them. I could see swarms of moths gathering around there. I walked into the gas station and saw Carlos, who was one of my coworkers. His shift was just ending, but I liked to show up a little early so that we could chat. He would sometimes stay a little late with me before taking off. Once Carlos left, I did most of my work for the night. I was able to get through it really quickly because not a single customer came in for the first 2 hours of my shift. After that, I didn't really have anything to do other than cover the cash and help customers if they had trouble with the pumps. Since the pumps had payment processors built in, there usually wasn't much for me to do. Nothing much happened for the next few hours. I was doing a crossword puzzle while listening to music on my phone. I had only one earbud in, just in case a customer came in. That way I would hear the door open. That was when I heard 3 loud bangs coming from outside. It sounded like someone was banging on our back door. That was incredibly strange, because I didn't see any cars pull up, and Carlos was long gone. I thought it was my imagination, but then I heard one more bang. I knew I had to check what it was, so I turned off my music and put my phone in my pocket. Then I walked to the front door. When I stepped out, I confirmed that mine was in fact the only car there. I continued around to the back of the store. It was well lit all the way around. When I turned the corner to the back, I saw it. A man was standing there facing away from me. The bright fluorescent lights covered him in that artificial glow. He had gray hair sticking out from under a baseball hat. Other than that, he wore a black t-shirt and shorts. It was summer, but the night still got pretty cold, so that was weird too. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I said. He didn't move. I waited another few seconds, and then I asked him again. No response. He was still facing away from me, so I walked around trying to make eye contact with him. I kept a lot of distance though, because I was kind of scared already. When I made it to the other side, I could almost see the man's face, but his head was pointing down. I took 2 steps closer to him, and when I did, the man's head jerked up towards me. He had the creepiest smile I've ever seen. After that happened, I shuffled back a good 10 or 20 feet, still looking at the guy. Once I put some distance between us, the man turned around and walked into the dense woods that backed onto the gas station. Once he was away from the lights, he was in the pitch darkness. I couldn't see where he went after that, and I had no idea where he could have gone. Like I said, there were no other cars, and that place was so remote that you couldn't walk there. It would be a really long walk anyway. After he was gone, I went back into the store and tried to comprehend what had just happened. I honestly didn't know what to do. I guess I could have called the police, but for what? I guess he was banging on the door. That might be illegal, but it seemed like a stretch. I could have called to do some kind of a wellness check, but at the time I was so confused that I didn't know. I finished my shift as usual, and then I went home. When I woke up the following afternoon, I checked my phone. I found out on the news that there was a missing person reported that morning. The description didn't match the man I saw. He was at least 50, but the missing person was a 22-year-old guy. I called the police anyway to report what I saw, since I thought it might be connected. The police said they would look into it, but I never heard anything back. I still don't know if the two incidents were connected, but I think it was too much of a coincidence if they weren't. Something sinister happened that night, and I have no idea how close I came to being a part of it. When this happened, I was around 18 years old. I had my driver's license, but I hadn't saved up for a car yet, so I was still driving my mom's minivan whenever she would let me use it. I lived around 30 minutes outside the city, but I would go into the downtown area often with my friends. There wasn't much to do in my neighborhood, so my parents were usually willing to let me use one of their cars. I was going to a concert one night with my friend Brad, and I was driving. On the way home, we needed to fill up the van, so we stopped at a gas station that was downtown, near the concert venue. I pulled into one of the empty pumps. They were all empty. It was midnight on a Tuesday, so there were not many people out. I got out of the van and started filling up the tank. Brad went into the store to get a drink and some snacks. I looked over to the store as Brad walked in. There was a man standing next to the door. He was around 45 years old with gray hair and wrinkled skin. He wore a brown sweatshirt with some kind of a logo on it. After Brad went in, the man followed. Once I was done with the gas, I pulled away from the pump and into one of the parking spots off to the side. Then I waited for my friend. A minute later, I saw Brad approaching, but he wasn't alone. That man was with him. I could tell by the look on Brad's face that he was uncomfortable. When they got to the car, Brad said the man needed a ride, but I could tell he wanted me to say no. I made up some excuse about how my parents would be mad. The man had a mean look on his face, but before I knew it, he pulled a knife and placed it against Brad's abdomen.
"Unlock the door and do what I say,"
the man grumbled. I tried to stall. I didn't want to let that psycho into my van, but I couldn't leave Brad alone with him either. I looked over to my friend to see tears flowing down his face. He was scared to death. Just when I was about to let him in, another man walked by towards the store. I made eye contact with him and mouthed the words, "Help me." He looked away, then he looked back with concern. I was sure that he noticed. I tried to stall some more. I told the man with the knife that I would let him in, but that the door was jammed. He obviously didn't believe me and pressed the knife harder at Brad. Brad started crying louder. Another long minute passed when sirens began to emerge from the distance. When the man heard that, he took off running. I didn't even see which way he went. The police were able to catch him that night, and Brad was taken to the hospital. There was a deep gash in his side from that knife. I had no idea at the time that the man was actually stabbing him. I thought it was more of a threat, but no. Brad was standing there that whole time, with a knife literally in his abdomen. I gained a new respect for him after that. I would have absolutely crumbled, but he kept it together. Overall, it was the worst night of our lives so far. Brad got it a lot worse than I did, but I'm sure it would have been worse if we let that psycho into the car. We may not have lived to tell the story. I began working at a gas station during my last year of high school. It was my first job, because work was hard to find in my area. Many of my friends were still not able to find work, even after we graduated, so I was pretty happy to have the job, even though the pay was low. One catch was that I had to work the late shift, not overnight, but I started at 5 p.m. and went until midnight usually. After that, my boss's son Andre would take over. He didn't mind the overnight shift because he would stay up all night gaming anyway. I had been working there for a few months, and nothing much happened. It was a boring job, but it was also easy. They would give me some basic cleaning work to do, and then I would have to stock some shelves. That would never take me long though, so I would end up reading books on my phone for at least a few hours every shift. There was a back area at the store where I could hide out. If the door opened, then I would go out and help the customer. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to stand behind the counter the whole time. There was also a feed from the security cameras back there, so I could keep an eye on the store. One night at around 11 p.m., I was sitting in the back reading a book on my phone. It was a quiet night so far, but then I heard the door open. I looked up at the security screen and saw a man walk in. No problem, I thought. I put my phone in my pocket and walked out into the store area. I immediately noticed that the man didn't have a car. He came on foot. That was kind of strange, but not that unheard of. The guy was around 25, with blue athletic shorts and a dirty t-shirt that was at least 2 sizes too big. He had a patchy blonde beard and shaggy blonde hair. He just walked around aimlessly in the store for 20 excruciating minutes, and then he left. Neither of us said a word to the other during that time. Later that night, Andre came in to take over. I told him about that guy and mentioned how creeped out I was. Andre told me that he knew the guy from high school and said that his name was Craig. He also told me that the guy got pretty heavily into drugs, so Andre didn't talk to him anymore. He'd had to ask the guy to leave a few times before, but didn't have any problems with him beyond that. Andre was not able to explain why he came to the store all the time, because he never tried to steal anything before. He would just come in and walk around. On my next shift, the same thing happened. At around 11 p.m., that same guy, Craig, came in and loitered for about 20 minutes or half an hour. Then he left without saying a word. It was creepy as hell, and I wanted him to leave. I thought that if I kicked him out, though, he might get angry and try something, so I never did anything. When I traded off with Andre, I told him about Craig again. He didn't have any answers for me. He said I should just ignore it, because the guy was probably harmless. On my next shift, however, it was around 11, and I was expecting a visit from Craig as usual. I was out in the aisles stocking some shelves when the door opened. This time, 2 guys walked into the store. They were both wearing full masks covering their faces, but I was pretty sure one of them was Craig. The other guy was bigger, at least 6'2" and huge. He wore a black jacket and black pants. As soon as I laid eyes on these guys, I knew I was in trouble. I should mention that it was before lockdowns, so masks were not normal at all. They didn't waste any time. Both men walked over to me. The larger one pulled out a gun. If I was behind the counter, then I would have been able to trip the alarm, but I was steps away, which might as well have been miles. They forced me to the register and made me give them all the money, which I would estimate was less than $300. The big guy then demanded my phone. As soon as I gave it to him, he smashed it on the floor right in front of me. After that, they looted the store for a few minutes and then left. As soon as they did, I hit the alarm and waited for the police. They were there in minutes. I told them that I knew one of the robbers. Andre came in and gave them a full description of Craig, including his last name. He was arrested that night, and I heard he gave up his accomplice in minutes. Both of them did time in jail for what they did to me. The most messed up thing is that they got out, and I still see Craig around town. One time he even tried to talk to me as if we were friends. I told that guy to F off, and I hope I never see him again. I look younger than I really am, thanks to my height of 5'0", and due to the fact that I don't age like most girls. I only just remembered this story when I was talking to my mom. February 11th was the night of the Valentine's dance I was attending at my school. I had worn my mother's golden prom dress. My friend Anne had a white and pink dress. This is important information. Anne's dad was our chaperone, so after we got into the car, he drove us to a gas station. He asked us both to go in and pay for the gas, but since Anne had no idea what to do, I did it. Upon approaching the counter, the cashier greeted us by saying,
"Where are you pretty ladies headed to?"
Since he had a bit of a broken English tone, I tried to be polite and replied, "We just got back from a dance." Keep in mind that it was around 12 in the morning at this point.
"Oh, I should have gone. Maybe I could find me some pretty ladies like you."
He had a smirk on his face. Anne and I were already freaked out, so we just excused ourselves and poked around the store. While we did, we were whispering about how creepy he was. I caught him peeking over the counter to us multiple times. Suddenly he started talking again.
"So, how old are you pretty ladies? About 18, I'd guess."
We were nowhere near 18. We might have looked a little bit older because of our heels and the makeup we wore, but that's it. I'm older than my friend by a year, but I was still 14 and she was 13. Our birthdays were in just a few days. Mine came before hers. Hers was one day after mine. and began to tell him our ages until I spoke up and said, "Actually, we gotta go," and I dragged her outside. We got out of there, and we never saw him again.